There are numerous personality tests out there, and many of us are familiar with Myers-Briggs, which was first published in 1962 and was considered the gold standard for many years. To name a few others, there's the DISC assessment, there's the 4-color personality test, Goleman's EQ test, and then there is the Enneagram, which is really a growth-oriented tool to be used for better understanding of self and to help people identify their strengths and their opportunities. I consider myself a student of the Enneagram because I just find it super interesting. And for our guest today, the Enneagram opened the door to not only very important and life-changing self-discovery, but it laid the foundation for what was to become her future career, where her boundless energy and business savvy helps her clients with personal and professional growth. Health, wellness, career, relationships, and everything in between. We're removing the taboo from what really matters in midlife. I'm your host, Michelle Folan, and this is Asking for a Friend. Welcome to the show, everyone. Today's guest is Deni Tato. She is the president of Corporate Consciousness, which has revolutionized how business sees employees and plan for the future. They coach, train, and consult with creative, innovative companies who want to stay ahead of the competitive and collaborative curve. Welcome to Asking for a Friend, Deni Tato.
Thank you. Very happy to be here.
It's great to have you here. I listened to you on a podcast probably 3 years ago. It was maybe even during COVID. Then come to find out that you work with my daughter, Amelia, at the company where she is. There's always a couple degrees of separation around this town.
I was going to say, especially in Cincinnati.
Exactly. I'd love for you first to just tell everyone about where you're from, your family, and then also your career path to where you are today.
Okay, happy to do that. I was born and raised here in Cincinnati. Well, actually, that's not true. I was raised in the middle of nowhere, which is now called the Eastgate Mall. But if you can even imagine what that was like a very long time ago, it really was the middle of nowhere. I'm a middle child of 11 children in a family that was just very challenged, just very much deviated from the norms at that time. And there was, for me, a lot of chaos. I can look back now and see that I escaped that through my idealizations. I lived for the future, all the possibilities, all the jobs I was going to have. I was going to go be then it was an airline stewardess, and then I was going to go be an interpreter at the UN, even though I didn't speak any foreign languages. I'm sure I could figure that out. It's consumed me, books, TV shows, etc. And as what may come as no surprise, I left the house really right after I graduated from high school. And I married very early at 19 to somebody much older than I. I was just, this is it. This is exactly what's supposed to happen. And you know how that rarely works. And I had 3 children. My husband, we divorced and I remarried. And my second husband and I knew from the beginning I want to own my own business. And we had both been in sales. An opportunity opened up for a company he was working for. He was selling commercial furniture to start their own dealerships in the Midwest. It was called Knoll, which is now owned by Herman Miller, but it did not have any penetration in the Midwest. At that point, we were living in Chicago and we moved, sold everything we had to get the money together to start the business. And we did. It was tremendously, really successful and tons of fun and really spoke to my strengths. Unfortunately, my husband was diagnosed as bipolar shortly after that, and it was imperative that I run the company, which is what I did.
How long did you do that?
22 years.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
He was home with the kids or golfing or whatever. I did all of that and achieved all of these things that I thought it would be impossible. What I found when I was, I guess, probably 40, is that I had literally everything that I could buy, 3 beautiful children. People didn't know that he was bipolar. When he wasn't around, but he was gorgeous and handsome and a wine connoisseur and a scratch golfer. So just that perfect little made-up life. I thought, gosh, I've got everything. And I just felt like I was still looking for something, kind of desperately, in terms of just this energy and this never being able to settle down.
Yeah.
And keeping myself constantly distracted and constantly busy. And I'll chair this event for the Contemporary Arts Center and do this at the zoo on top of everything else. That's what I was doing. I inadvertently discovered the Enneagram in probably 2004. And it was a horrible presentation. It was like 1960s film clips. And I'm like, wow, what is this? But what I will say, it spoke to me in a completely different language than anything I'd ever done. And of course, I had used every self-improvement, self-discovery tool available. I could not get enough of myself, whether that was through Myers-Briggs or Strength Finders or DISC or whatever. I was like, oh my gosh, could this be true? And this is a typical pattern, all in. I thought, I'm just going to go learn this incredible tool. I'm still going to get my job.
Right.
But gosh, it could help me so much in terms of getting to know somebody. I don't have to ask them 5,000 questions, which was kind of all about doing things efficiently. I thought I'll just go do that, which I did. And I became an Enneagram teacher.
But you were still with their company and you're doing this on top of it.
Oh, of course I was just learning it, a side hobby. And actually at that point, in 1986, I was just a big fish in a really little pond in terms of women-owned businesses. When I look back, I thought, oh my gosh, I've been doing this for a long time, because what made me happy, I was doing a lot of coaching, a lot of, hi, I'm a friend of a friend, and I'm trying to leave and she said that you may be able to help me. First tier women entrepreneurs, I had like groups.
Yeah.
Peer learning communities of these. And I didn't realize it was because it's what my passion is.
Yeah.
I just thought, oh, this is something else. Sounds fun. I'm good at this. So I was doing all that. And the more work I did in the Enneagram, the more I got to know myself in a way that I hadn't. The obvious things I noticed right away. My inability to kind of sit. Jack of all trades, a master of none, a multi-talented generalist, optimist, all of those things. But as I saw how they applied to my life, it was really a couple years of me digging deeper and deeper. And consciousness or self-awareness, it comes in shifts. It's not like a light switch, but it's like aha, just like, wow, the world just looks different now. And I remember the time when the last turn in that, when I had an office in Columbus and came home and my daughter was upset about something that dad had done or not done or whatever. Up to that point, when the children I came home and they had anything negative to say, I had the same answer. Oh, I'm sorry, honey. I'm home now. What do you want to do? Where do you want to go to the mall? And then if they persisted, I would say, oh, you're making me sad. This is not what I came home for. It was this shift where I could see in myself that this is my issue, that I have no tolerance for anything that's not, and life is not like that. With it, I did more deep diving and realized that I probably should be out of this relationship, my marriage, which I did. It just set me on this journey. So this is now I'm a certified Enneagram instructor. I'm still doing my job. But what I realized over this process is at this point in my life, I really kind of sucked at my job because my job was so much different 22 years later than it was when I started.
Oh, I was going to say, how old were you at this point?
42.
So midlife.
Midlife, yes. And at this point, the business itself had changed a lot. what I was selling now was a commodity. When I started the business, I had the most expensive product and there was no groundwork laid. I'm very good at that. Now, this kind of miserly robbing Peter to pay Paul and all these low percent. I'm like, I'm not even good at doing this.
But it wasn't fun anymore.
And it wasn't fun. And it's not really not fun when you're trying to, but those little golden handcuffs are really kind of hard to separate from. But as soon as I had that realization, it kind of coincided with the recession in 2008. I remember for the Cincinnati Chamber of Commerce on like December 13th of 2007, I was the Woman-Owned Business of the Year. And I remember like February of 2008, I'm like, what in the world is going on? And things were really starting to close down. I thought, I can reinvent myself again. How many times have I done it? But I realized I can't do that. This is not why I'm here. There's something else for me. I picked up the phone and called somebody I had a relationship with for 20 years. He had similar business in Indianapolis. His name is also Deni. And I said, do you want to buy this business? I said, here's what I need. It's non-negotiable. If you're interested, let's talk. If not, I'm dialing for dollars. He said, I'm interested. And let's just say, I think a week later, I walked out.
Wow.
And that was it. Yep. He said, that's it.
Were you sad at all?
It's hard for me to be sad, actually, which is kind of sad.
What type are you?
I'm a 7.
You're a 7.
I'm the biggest 7, a 1-to-1 7, which is the most extreme, biggest, rose-colored glasses, feet are never on the ground, everything's possible. That was it. I walked out. I never went back. Actually, I'm happy to say that my brother still runs the business, manages the business, or Deni, my other brother still works there. But I just knew that this was not my path and that I had to make a new path. Actually, I hadn't even talked to my husband, my now husband, about this. And I remember coming home, I'm like, buddy, got some news.
How did that go over?
Well, it's kind of funny because I said, I'm like, I just sold the business and it's basically for debt. I'm kind of walking away with nothing because I knew and I could just see what was happening. If you remember, nobody was doing anything. There was going to be nobody to buy the business.
Had you bought out your second husband out of the business?
Oh, yes. We're all done.
Okay.
It is 100% me. Yes. I said, we might be living in a trailer by the river. And he's like, well, okay, be living in a trailer by the river. I said, oh, I think I like that. That was all I needed to say. I just said, I'm going to make a business out of this, of the Enneagram. I need to combine, because I've worked in the corporate world for 25 years, in and out at every level. I'm like, I'm going to take this tool that at that point, it's really more like church basements. I still don't use the word spiritual, but as you know, there is that deep element to it. I'm going to take this into business and it's going to be transformational. And that was the difference with it. I think there's a lot of good tools, but they are informational.
Yeah.
It's like a brain dump. This work just hit you at such a different place. That's what I did and focused on a couple of large companies, Toyota and P&G, and just had tremendous success. I knew that I wanted to do something. I was not going to call on all these small companies that I've been doing business with for 25 years. They're going to do something like this once a year.
Right.
And I said, I know I need to be in a company where budgets are already there to do this. They really have a record. I mean, it's there of truly investing in their people. If I make the work good enough, which is the key to me. I think Steve Martin said the work has to be so good, no one can ignore you. I'm like, if I make this work so good and take it in there, it will sell itself because they're going to be helped by knowing what other people's types are and all of that. So that's what happened.
I would love for you to just provide a brief history of the Enneagram because I think we kind of need to know a little bit about its origin for people to see how this can be effective for business and for our personal lives.
That would be great. Actually, the history of the Enneagram, the symbol itself, the Enneagram symbol, it's evidenced thousands of years ago throughout history. The symbol itself has been used as a map of process. Gurdjieff used it as that. human consciousness, archetypes, all of those things. What we're using right now that people are familiar with is the Enneagram of personality, which is what everybody knows. It doesn't come from any single source. It's a hybrid of a number of ancient wisdom traditions combined with modern psychology that was spearheaded in the early 60s by a Chilean psychiatrist named Claudio Naranjo. He was part of the Gestalt therapy community very early on. He taught at UC Berkeley. He was a key figure in the Echelon Institute and a really important part of, depending on how old you are, the human potential movement. It's been used in business here and there since the 90s, and that's the history of it.
Okay.
And what it is, I think of it as a psychological, relational construct that maps out 9. You can think of them as distinct and different, but interconnected patterns of thinking, feeling, and behaving. So the dominant pattern of thinking, feeling, and behaving at type 2 is different than at type 6. There is not a preferred type. All types have an equal amount of strengths and liabilities. It's knowing what those are that you can leverage those assets and minimize the things that you get in your way.
And a lot of people know Myers-Briggs.
Mm-hmm.
How is it different from Myers-Briggs?
That's a great question, and it's very different. Myers-Briggs, DISC, StrengthsFinders, Berkman, Hogan, the list goes on forever. Those are all valuable tools that I think can help give a person insights. Those tools, everything but the Enneagram, all of those tools, basically what you're measuring when you go online to take that, they're measuring your behavior. Okay? Your Enneagram type is not in any way determined by your observable behavior. Instead, it's completely driven by your hidden motivation. I really don't care what you do. I care a lot about why you do that and why I think that should be important to you and everyone else. I do not believe you will make a long-term sustainable change in a behavior by focusing on the behavior.
Interesting.
I believe you have a negative consequence to a behavior for a short period of time. That behavior's better, but before you know it, you're back where you started. I think of it this way, that your perceptions create your beliefs and your values. Your beliefs create those thoughts and the feelings, and then those feelings create the behavior. Other people will typically tell you to tweak the behavior. If you're a 9, you have to be more confident, you have to speak up more. You 8, you talk too much, you say whatever. I say, who cares? I believe that your behavior is a manifestation of what's going on back here. Your perceptions, your beliefs, and your values. And I work with people every day who have had transformational changes in their behavior only by, number one, accepting that, understanding it, being very compassionate, and above all, being curious about the behavior and coming back here with an openness and a curiosity when you can find it's really an understanding and an acceptance about why you do that. You can have transformational change because you cannot change what you don't understand.
True.
Whatever it is you're working on, as soon as you're like, oh gosh, it's right here. I don't think we understand ourselves. I think we live on the surface of ourselves and everyone else. We judge people on how they behave. And when they behave differently than we do, we think they are the issue. Our issues are external. If I had more of this, or a better boss, or a better partner. And what we fail to see, I tell everybody I work with, if you aren't the problem, there is no solution.
Oh.
And as soon as you can take radical responsibility, but what that requires is that you can understand yourself. And I could take every choice I've made and I can look and say, how could I have been any different? There's nothing wrong with me. I don't need to be fixed. I'm not broken. I just needed to connect the dots. And with that, say, how does this work for me? Wow, this particular aspect works really well in these relationships. It doesn't work well at all over here. And be able to self-manage, be able to learn to be not reactive, but instead to be thoughtfully responsive. The only reason we suffer, we think, like I said, it's external, but what's causing us to suffer is how we're reacting to that external thing.
Yeah.
And when you look at it from a different perspective, it simply changes everything. And that's what I was saying when I was describing my walk with that. It was interesting at first, and the more I saw it, and then that last piece where I'm like, oh my gosh, my real problem is I am completely intolerant of the downside of life. All I had to look to my childhood to say, of course I was. What an incredible survival strategy for me to always be happy. I have brothers and sisters who, let's just be kind and say, they were not happy and still aren't happy with how we were raised. I was happy all the time. What a gift.
Yeah.
But I didn't know it was the gift, so I didn't know how to use it, so I overused it. And what you find in the Enneagram is that whatever your type is, what's inferred in that type, there are things you do better than the other 8. We'll talk about how it develops. But what we do once we start in that process, saying, making ourselves smaller and saying, oh, this is me. Oh, we take those gifts, and simply because we over-identify with those particular aspects of ourselves, we overuse those aspects. So what I find is our liabilities and our strengths are exactly the same thing. Optimism is a gift. Delusion, not so much. And I would absolutely say I was delusional for the first 40-something years of my life. That is not an overstatement. I taught my brain to automatically reframe anything that was painful. And if it's painful, just first of all, just distract yourself from it. Go do something else and find something that's going to make you feel better.
Oh, this is so interesting.
Yeah, and it's that simple.
What's really neat, though, is that you don't just teach it.
Oh, my God.
You've lived the Enneagram. I guess my perception is you can teach someone to teach the Enneagram, but the fact that you've put yourself through the process, it's just been a miraculous discovery for you.
Miraculous. I'm the same person, and I'm a very different person at the same time.
Yeah.
When I could learn to understand what was going on and what was I really here to bring forward.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's almost like you're digging into people's core values.
That's exactly right.
To find out exactly where they live, but not letting their core values dictate how they respond.
Exactly right.
To things, to situations.
That's why it's so interesting when people say, how can I be the same type as her? We behave so differently. Of course you do. The only thing, if you and I are both the same type, all that's saying is that we perceive the world through a very similar lens, which would be a lens of positivity or whatever. We believe the same things. We believe the same things about the world. For me, I believe at the core, what started all of this is the world can be confining and constraining, because that's what I found in my very early life. There couldn't be attention for me. There couldn't be, and it just felt so small. I felt so isolated. I felt so on my own. So that instilled in me, that means my happiness is just out here. I've got to go find it. I just got to get out of here. Let's think about all the places I could go. It's so simple. It's the simplest work you'll ever do, and it's the hardest work you'll ever do. Everything you already need to do this work is already in you. You came equipped with it. There's nothing out here that you need, and you get to practice it all day, every day. There's no books to buy. There's no any other things that you need to do. And once you get the work, it's really about awareness. Self-awareness, self-compassion, all of those things which you can practice in everyday relationship.
Each type has superpowers, and then there are the kryptonite aspects of each. Can you go into that a little bit and how that plays out for people?
Sure. Everybody has a dominant type, a core type, an Ennea type, whatever that is. And maybe it would be helpful for me to talk a little bit about how that develops, and then we'll talk about what you just suggested. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure.
How our type develops, because this is what else is different, back to Myers-Briggs or any of those. Here's the two things that are different. Number one, your type is created by age 7, and it doesn't change in your lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
Your type is a combination of nature and nurture. It's a combination of what you brought with you for this journey, which is your genetic makeup and your inborn temperament. And those two aspects work in combination, in partnership with who and what you experienced in those first 7 years to create your dominant type. Because I believe our lives are purposed. I believe we are here for a reason. And when we were born, that type, that reason, was potentially embedded over several different types. And that, to me, when you see a less than 2-year-old, to me, that's what consciousness looks like.
Yeah.
An 18-month-old child is awake and aware. They are 100% present moment. They have not learned to be self-conscious. They haven't had to learn to manage their emotions. They're bold. They're beautiful.
Yeah.
Then at age 2 with attachment. And we now have to separate from that person, and it's very scary. So we start paying a whole lot of attention to our family of origin. We start paying a lot of attention to certainly these 2 and maybe 3 or 4 very important people. Pay a lot of attention to what's affirmed, what they like. We've got to fit in here. And we try to give them more of that. We want to mirror back their self-perceived good qualities. While at the same time, those things that are not welcome in the family dynamic, we start burying those. Even though we had the potential, we came in with all of this openness, and we start, who am I? We make ourselves smaller and smaller. So by age 7, out of what's available to us and what was affirmed, we're like, you know what? When I think and feel and behave like this, I feel more loved, more worthy, more secure. And remember, all the while this is going on, our brain is developing an astonishing rate. 80% by age 3, 90% by age 5.
Yeah.
And our brain is a pattern-seeking survival machine that demands efficiency. Our brain takes between 20 and 25% of our body's energy to manage it. That's all the time. That's whether you're laying on a beach or doing calculus. And it's our brain's efficiency. What does it do? You like that? You're right. That's very good. And we adopt over that period of time this one particular pattern that is dominant to all other patterns. Like I said, we have the energy. We were sent here with access to the other. But we're like, that's not me, that's not me, that's not me. So from the age of 7 to adolescence, we start making ourselves smaller and smaller, who we think we are. And it gives us a false sense of control. If I can just figure out who I am, I won't get my feelings hurt. I might not fail.
I might not get in trouble.
And then we go to high school. It's like, am I a jock? Am I a nerd? Am I pretty? Am I smart? It's like through this process, we put ourselves in this box. The Enneagram didn't do that. It's like we put duct tape around the box, and now we're very, very mean to ourselves, very critical, very much wanting to be like somebody else and wondering why they have that and I don't. So the Enneagram is really about getting you out of the box that you have put yourself in and seeing what's here. It's like young shadow work. It's like, this is me. Look over here. Don't pay attention to this hefty bag that I carry behind me of stuff that I don't acknowledge. And when that comes out, that's big and bold. You have to stuff that back and then say, no, look over here again. It's like, dump the bag. What is going on here?
Oh my God. This really should be the first step for anyone that is wanting to do self-help or get therapy.
I completely agree.
This is really fascinating.
I can't tell you how many of my clients, I don't know if it's a third or a half, are in therapy. I mean, it is so wonderful. It's like now to be able to see what's really the why, what's at this core, and then to dig through, because I'm about the present moment. If you're not in the room, we're not talking about you. A therapist, on the other hand, has a very different strategy for that. And let's put these puzzle pieces together. It's so effective and so needed. But so many times when you can use both of those, it's such a deep yes.
Yeah. There's really no good type or bad type, but there are, like we were talking about, superpowers and kryptonite for each type.
Okay. Let's talk about all of that. It does not matter what type you are. So you can almost look at it. Here's the diagram. Across the bottom is 1 to 9. And up here on the left side are levels of consciousness. That's what matters. For every single type, there are bottom feeders. They are circling the drain of their type. We will not discuss politics here, but let's say that's a very good place for us to see how you can say, how can this person and this person be the same type? The only thing that matters is your level of awareness, your level of consciousness. That's what the Enneagram does. Like I said, I was a very unaware 7. I saw the world like this through all these filters, all these defenses, all this aggressiveness. And now it's like, oh my God. But what matters, and I'm also certified as a senior spiral dynamics, which is our levels of consciousness or awareness, of which there's 8. That's what you want to work on. That's where the gain is. And even the assessment that I use, it even tells you where your level of consciousness is. Low, moderate, when you start. It's not telling you. It has nothing to do with intelligence. It says, how stuck do I get at my type versus how? What matters is your level of consciousness. It does not matter what type you are. You want to be a healthy, conscious, awake, aware, whatever, 3, 7, 9, with a lot of self-awareness to know what you do. Once you have determined this is my dominant type, my work is to get you unstuck from that. It's what you were referencing. Here's another unique feature of the system. The growth strategies are completely implied in the system, unlike any Myers-Briggs disc, whatever. It tells you. When I read my ENTJ, I could look and say, oh my God, that sounds exactly like me. And then my second sentence is, I don't have any idea what I'm supposed to do about that. So I'll put it in my desk drawer. I promise I will get it back out. We never get it back out.
No, we don't.
No, because we don't know what to do with it. But it's fascinating and it's kind of egoic.
Oh, it is.
To be so seen. And it's like, oh, I'm so seen. That sounds just like me.
Everybody loves to know about themselves.
Yes. And you just want to make copies and hand them out to people to say, this is me. So if you want to work with me, here you go. The Enneagram is the complete opposite of that. You understand the strengths, the liabilities, the why at a very, very deep level. What do I believe? And you start questioning those and be curious about that. And then there are 2 growth strategies. The first one that are implied right in the system, the first one are your wings. Your wings are located next to your dominant type. Now, I will also tell you, you will hear a lot of people say, I'm a 7 with a 8 wing. That's more old school. That's Riso Hudson, the most brilliant Enneagram writers. But what we know now is you have access to both sides of you. One of them is probably going to be more dominant. You'll be more familiar with one. But if you think of the Enneagram as a map, I want you to own more real estate on your map. That's my goal. I don't want you just living at this little confining house of anything, right? Of 8, 2, or 4. It doesn't matter. I want you to buy the lots on either side and develop them so that you can start using those assets of the 2 types on either side of you. You have to intention this. You're like, oh, if you're a 3, a very ambitious, very successful, driven far by all of those things. And it's just a lot. I drive for me. I've got to succeed. I want to win the prize. I want to be noticed. Well, what's right next to you is 2, which is a giver. I don't even know what I need. I'm only happy when I make other people happy. I love to serve. When you can lean into that as a 3, conversations are very different. Relationships are very different. Because you say, I can honestly care about you first. I want to understand, why did you choose to run the project this way? And be deeply interested. Mm-hmm. Instead of walking in and saying, that's not the way I want it. And you can be more compassionate, more empathetic.
You just described me. I'm a 3 with a 2 wing.
Isn't that wonderful?
Yeah.
Which I was saying also, don't forget that 4 wing that's on the other side, which is the creative, which is probably why you do what you're doing right now.
Mm-hmm.
What was you saying? The 4 is the truly real creativity and innovation and all that comes from our souls, right? It's a heart thing.
Mm-hmm.
Creativity. I'm only creative up here. The wings are 1, and then you also have 2 lines that are connecting you to 2 completely different types.
Okay, that was my next question.
They're called different things. B. Chestnut would call them access points. I call them superpowers. And you will see that's where the magic happens. Those 2 other types. So for you, it's 4 and 8 if you're a 2. Oh, I'm sorry, you said you're a 3, so it's 6 and 9.
Mm-hmm.
This is all called integration. When you can access the gifts, that's when the work gets absolutely game-changing. Because you'll see that's for you, 6 and 9 are very, very different from 3.
Oh, yes.
And Amelia's a 9.
Yeah.
So different. And the best she'll ever be is when she can tap into your 3-ness and say, I'm going to take the action. I'm going to take the risk. I am important. I want to be recognized. And the best you'll ever be is where you can be more open. It's really about collaboration and a whole bunch of different ways to do things. Things aren't right or wrong. There's not a clarity at 9. It's just, oh, that's a good idea. And that's a good idea. When you can do all of that, it's like tools in your tool belt. It's called integration. When you can integrate these other parts, we're now up to 5 types. 1 is very dominant, and that will never change.
It's so cool. I'll back up because you mentioned Amelia, and Amelia is my youngest daughter. I wanted everybody to know that because you work with Amelia, you know what her type is. Question is, are there better types to pair as couples?
People ask me that all the time. All the time. And I actually do have even a couples report in terms of put 2 people and to tell you the strengths and the liabilities. So here's what I would say. Back to levels of awareness and consciousness. When you have a high level of consciousness, when you're really awake and aware, people cannot mess with you anymore. You kind of get along with everybody because you get it. You know, they're just being them. It doesn't go up against you like that. So that really is what matters. I would prefer, my preference, really, I could get along with anyone, is really that they are awake and aware, that they have awareness of how they are impacting other people, all of those other things. But I will say that there are, number 1, I always still believe, and as opposites attract, especially if you're raising children, 2 of the same thing is a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot of one aspect. When you can have very different perspectives, it's really a beautiful thing. But I do think my husband is a 6. We're completely opposite. He's fear-based, afraid, detail, what terrible thing could happen next. And it works beautifully because I never go there. So you can just see how that works. But when you have awareness around, oh yeah, sure, this is our issue. But there are types. Having somebody more caring, because I'm really not. I'm pretty narcissistic and driven. Oh, pretty might not even be a strong enough word. I am naturally wired to take care of me, trust me. Being with somebody who really has a heart is just a lovely thing. And like I said, good for children or any of those things. And it's really about cognitive diversity. That's really what I teach when I take this work into companies. We talk about every kind of diversity, which is hugely important, with DEI. Cognitive diversity is the difference in how you perceive a problem, as well as your preferred style for solving it. But the problem is we like to hire people who are like us. We like when people mirror back she'll fit right in. She's a lot like us. And I'm saying that's the biggest mistake you can make. But when you hire people who have different perspectives, different types, it's chaotic, it's messy. And you have to have a level of awareness to understand that. But the results are phenomenal when you can do that.
I rolled out the Enneagram with my sales team.
Mm-hmm.
I manage a inside sales team, largely women. I have a team full of 1s and 2s. with a couple other ones sprinkled in, but it's largely ones and twos. And I didn't hire all the people on my team. It's just really funny how it's almost like there was a mold that they looked at to hire this group to be successful in this role. It's made my job pretty easy because I have one or two types that I deal with on a daily basis, and I kind of know what makes them tick. But this has been really helpful for me as a people manager to understand what's important to me may not always be important to the people on my team. I really do recommend people take the Enneagram test because it's so wonderful in regard to your self-discovery.
Absolutely. And almost every company has a type. Countries have a type. And you see what you just described. Every company I go into, there is a dominant type. I was just on an offsite in Florida with a huge local company here. 2 and 9, which look a lot alike. I mean, their behaviors are the same. It's like, hey, there was 150 people. And it's like 70 people were either 2s or 9s. And then just like, what are we missing? And when you start seeing these holes, it's wow. Yeah.
Incredible. Do you have a recommended link that listeners can go to take the Enneagram for themselves?
Certainly. Let's talk about that a minute because there's only one reliable Enneagram test. It's called the IEQ-9, which I am a practitioner. It's out of South Africa. It's in 8 different languages. Actually, I sell more Enneagram assessments than anybody in the world.
Seriously. And it is incredible. You will get a 23-page report that I think will blow your mind. You would want the standard report. They give you a standard or professional. The professional is 60 pages, and it's really for working with a team, like consulting. But you will get a 23-page report that is mind-blowing. Every time somebody writes a book, they make an Enneagram. They're still measuring behavior. That's why people are saying, oh, I used to be this and now I'm that. No, you never were that. I think it's hugely important. If you can't do that, the only thing I did before the IEQ was developed is I had to do one-to-one interviews because the other tests are not reliable. I think it has no integrity because if I tell you, Michelle, oh, you're this, you're going to believe that. And your mind will start sorting to the things that you do like that. Your entire Enneagram, it's all off. You don't have access to the strengths. Either a one-to-one interview, which there's people that still do those, but it takes an hour, or the IEQ-9 is a wonderful way to go. And they can go to my website. Okay.
I also offer the test and a 90-minute debrief. That's right on the website for $300.
Okay.
The test itself, if they go to the website directly, I think is $60 compared to $5. That's a lot, but it's the best money they will have ever spent because they're going to get something that's accurate. Yeah, lots of ways to do that, but you just want it to be accurate.
While we're on that, can you share your website with the listeners, please?
It's www.corp, C-O-R-P, consciousness, CONSCIOUSNESS.com. Sorry about the long name, but Corp Consciousness.
Well, corporate consciousness would be a lot longer, so that's good.
I'm saying it's a lot longer.
I am so thrilled I was able to have you as a guest today.
Oh, good.
This was fabulous, and I really appreciate it. I appreciate your time so much.
And I appreciate you, Michelle, and so happy that you reached out. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Deni.
My pleasure.
Follow Asking for a Friend on social media outlets and provide a review and share this show wherever you get your podcasts. Reviews and sharing help us grow.